Has KSI saved Kingpyn and put influencer boxing back in its prime? That's a question that myself, and Nick will be discussing on today's episode of DR Boxing. Welcome back to DR Sports and welcome back to what is a very, very tasty edition of DR Sports Boxing. Almost as tasty as this here can of prime. Delectable.
Are you allowed to be doing this?
You're damn right I'm allowed to be doing it. If KSI is going to save Kingpyn, he's going to save me. And the reason we do obviously say that is because Kingpyn has just been taken over by DAZN. DAZN are now going to be the exclusive broadcaster for the rest of their tournament. Obviously, they had the quarterfinals a couple of months ago. They tried to do it on their own. But what we have seen, which is a huge issue within the influencer boxing space, is there is a huge piracy problem. I mean, that's a problem with sports in general. The UFC struggle with it. Sky Sports Boxing struggle with it. All these big companies struggle with it, but they at least have some sort of protection method to stop it from being as easily piratable. However, we've seen it now with Creator Clash. They had to shut down recently because they lost so much money because of piracy. We've seen it with Social Gloves now, and now we're seeing it with Kingpyn. Thankfully for them, DAZN have stepped in last second. There was talks about the tournament being cancelled. What are your thoughts on this whole situation that we found ourselves in?
I think that, first of all, I think people have underestimated how difficult it is to make these businesses work. You've got people in, at the early stage, we're getting influencers in who bring their own audiences, and that's good. But then you pay these people big appearance fees because they're bringing the audience, and that's good. And it looked like for a while this influencer thing had cracked boxing because boxing promoters famously don't want to pay fighters and different things like that because they don't sell the fights and all the rest of it. But that only works on the front end. Long term, that gets very, very difficult. If shows don't do particularly well, and if there are cancellations, poor performances, it's going to hit you very, very hard. I spoke to people at DAZN a few years ago when they were just
sorry.
I know.
Big man Nick.
I know, it is what it is. But I spoke to people at DAZN through the business that I run, and they were talking about them trying to kind of buy market share, and we spoke about them signing AJ, we spoke about them signing Canelo, and I said to them, you're really over leveraging yourself here, because if these guys don't do well, and they were doing very well at the time, but if they suddenly don't do well, you could find yourself in a real black hole. And we had this whole conversation and strategy. We spoke about the strategy behind it and different things like that. And that's what influencer boxing has done. And unfortunately, when there have been cancellations and different things like that, it's going to hit you way harder than it's going to hit a Matchroom or a Boxer or something like that, because they do leverage themselves a lot less.
I think it's a big problem with the infrastructure in this. It's not just that they leverage themselves less, but the infrastructure of these events, and in general, it's a going out of business sale. It's try to make as much money as possible in a short space of time. At the beginning, when you first had KSI versus Joe Weller and you had KSI versus Logan Paul, the first event, it was kind of a passion project for a lot of these fighters. They wanted to get themselves fit. A lot of the storyline behind it was people like Anison Gibb losing hundreds of pounds worth of weight and getting in the ring, and there was a big passion behind it. And then all of a sudden they started to realize there is a hell of a lot of money in this, and that's when you got the LA influencers involved. That's when you started seeing people going in just for the eyeballs, just for the money. And that is when Social Gloves came in. And this is the big breaking point for me. This is where you realize that there was a huge problem within the scene. Social Gloves come in and they start offering people £5 million a fight. They're offering Deji £5 million, Vinny Hacker £2 million. They're offering Taylor Holder £4 million. These people that do not deserve this kind of money are not going to draw anywhere near that eyeball. They'd put like 30 odd million pounds into that event. All of a sudden, they have their first event. It goes obviously nowhere near as well as they thought it was going to. And they went completely bankrupt. Austin McBroom went completely bankrupt. Everything went wrong. And they're trying to leverage too much money in, and
as Eddie Hearn would say, they've done their absolute conkers on that event.
They've done more than their absolute conkers on it, and he would be doing his conker on it because he's someone, I know he got involved in the first one when he saw the eyeballs and he saw the money, but then he's also a bit questionable of it. He's a bit slandering of the whole scene. But if you
that's the first red flag, right? Because like him or dislike him, Eddie Hearn's a very accomplished promoter. He knows the boxing business well.
Yeah.
He looked under the hood at the business, got involved in one or two of the bigger cards, and then said, actually, the infrastructure is not right. I'm going to back out, and that should be a real.
Well, I don't think he didn't say the infrastructure was right.
No,
he didn't want the criticism. And look, Kaylee.
We don't. Okay, all we know for certain is that he backed out. We don't know why. We're assuming why, but we don't really know the reasons why. And for me, I'm not saying KSI is a far better business person, more accomplished business person than I am, but he's made a big oversight here, because what we see in traditional boxing is that there is a promotional partnership on an exclusive basis. And I think it's a huge oversight to not have Misfits in DAZN on an exclusive basis, because he's allowed DAZN to go and sign another influencer platform.
True, but I don't think they can. I don't think they can, and I don't think he's that scared of it, because their business model is very different.
I understand that, but I still think that's a big oversight at a time when maybe it was a little bit of cockiness, a little bit of arrogance, nobody else was doing quite as good as Misfits. I don't know.
Kingpyn had their own thing before this tournament. They had their own kind of event. Again, they had a Simple Simon, some TikToker. He was facing Ed Matthews, whatever. It wasn't a huge event. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they just came out with this event, and they had millions of pounds to chuck in it. And I love the idea of the tournament. They signed some great people. I'm really excited to see this Anison Gibb Jarvis fight, and it's a great competition to see really who is at the top of the game in the influencer scene, because with all the money involved, you're seeing what you see in traditional boxing a lot, which is where people are ducking people and refusing to fight, and they want easy fights. So at least in this tournament, you can't do that. It's a fantastic idea. But the reason they were able to lure these people in is because they're offering monumental amounts more than everyone else. Like, for example, Anison Gibb, he revealed the contract stipulations he was drawn up. He was asked to fight on Misfits, okay? And this will show you how much less Misfits pay. And that is why Misfits are not part of this organizational problem when it comes to these influencer events, is because they don't pay as much. They were going to pay him £500,000 for a fight. He then had a fight against Floyd Mayweather, which, as we know, every single Floyd Mayweather exhibition bout is losing money by the millions with every event he does. They offered him £1 million, and Kingpyn offered him multi-million pounds, up to like +3+ million pounds.
Yeah, but you're pitching this like that's a good thing. But
no,
it's
I'm not. I'm saying that's a big problem within the scene, and they've been saved by. I'm saying because when you said KSI with the thing, KSI and Keely Sauerland's, the way they've set up Misfits is very different to any other influencer.
I understand it's different, but
theirs is actually a sustainable model.
I agree with you. So that's why the topic is, has he accidentally, by accident, saved his biggest rival? Because Kingpyn were arguably his biggest rival, and what KSI and Keely Sauerland have done is worked with DAZN to come up with a great model that actually works and stays profitable, but they didn't get an exclusive partnership. So now DAZN can take all their experience of that framework and do that again with somebody else, and not have to, and basically, not cut KSI out, because their shows are big, profitable shows. But now he's allowed somebody else to come in and take really his formula.
Yeah, that's true. But I think there's also a lot less names in the space than you would think that actually draw the big numbers. Like, there was a big problem in the last fight, actually, the last Kingpyn event. It was quite comical to look at. But the main event was obviously the rematch with Anison Gibb. Yeah. Unfortunately, they thought this was going to be the biggest fight of the card. That's why they put it the main event. They had Whindersson Nunes, this guy from Brazil. He's got like 65 million followers. Yeah. He was the co-main. Okay. Turns out about 90% of the arena had flown in from Brazil to watch his fight. They were going crazy the entire time. Second his fight ended, they all left. And there was like 10% of the people in the building for the main event. So this goes to show you that without a KSI on the marquee, without a Logan Paul, without a Jake Paul, these kind of things, they're not as big. They don't draw as much as people would expect. You still need the big names on there. So I don't think he's looking at Kingpyn as much of a competition as everyone else.
No, but what you're missing is not yet at this particular moment, because they've been failing. But everything that he has taught DAZN can now go and teach Kingpyn. So that will be a problem later. It won't be a problem now, but that will be a problem later.
But you're putting a lot of stock in DAZN. I don't think DAZN are as much of the brains behind the operation as Keely Sauerland and KSI are. I mean, just look at Matchroom. Look at Matchroom since they've joined DAZN. They were meant to change the game. DAZN don't need KSI to show them the infrastructure. They already have Matchroom to learn the infrastructure of how to run a profitable boxing organization from.
Not influencer boxing, though. That's totally
it's
different. Nah, it's totally different.
It's boxing. I know it's not completely the same, but the
business side of it is totally different. I think KSI has made an oversight by allowing this to happen. I think that's a big oversight on his part.
And what do you think he should do to resurrect this now? Do you think he should put pressure on DAZN?
I
say that he's going to pull his events off DAZN?
I think it's too late. I think it's too late for that. He's drawn so many people. You remember, DAZN's a subscription platform. It will be really difficult, especially if he's brought people in and it's on like annual subscriptions. It will be difficult to pull his people back off of that platform. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I would at least want some sort of share in. If I've built this infrastructure for you and showed you how to run profitable influencer boxing events, I want some sort of profit share of all influencer boxing events that come on this platform. Nobody else is making profit.
I don't think there's a bunch of Kingpyn are running it themselves. The only thing that
but they're on the DAZN platform.
They are, but the only thing DAZN are adding is allowing them to stop getting the piracy problem. Because it was profitable, aside from the fact that their pay-per-views kept getting pirated, and that's where
then it's not profitable. Then
that's called not profitable. We have the infrastructure.
If you sit in a business meeting and say my company's profitable, but we're going bankrupt because it doesn't matter. Bankrupt is bankrupt. That's not profitable. Bankrupt is bankrupt. I don't care about why it's profitable. Do you mean DAZN are not going to buy a company? Why would DAZN buy a company onto their platform when they could just take all of the influencers that are on that platform and give them over to Misfits? They must be doing something to lift up Kingpyn. That wouldn't make any sense.
Because those people have signed contracts.
Not if the company goes bankrupt. If the company goes bankrupt, the company doesn't exist anymore.
So the tournament goes and Misfits aren't going to cough up that kind of money. Kingpyn have some investors behind the scene that are willing to spend this kind of money.
They obviously don't, because they were going bankrupt. You obviously don't understand what bankrupt means. If they're declaring bankruptcy...
The thing is with those bankruptcy stories,
I know it's alleged.
There was a lot of different stories surrounding it. Whether if they were struggling, if
DAZN are not stupid. If they're picking up a platform that is struggling for money and struggling for audience, they will want some say.
No. They're not struggling for audience. In all other metrics, their numbers were phenomenal. The only metric it wasn't was pay-per-view buys, because everyone was pirating it.
How do you know that? How do you know that?
Because it's happened throughout a million.
They pirate everything. They pirate everything. They pirate football. They don't pirate Misfits events.
No, they don't. But KSI himself had said he had spent a lot of money on trying to prevent piracy. UFC spends a lot of money.
So then why don't the Kingpyn guys spend that kind of money on it then? If they're so well backed?
They don't have the infrastructure of a known broadcaster like DAZN in dealing with it. It's not perfect, and DAZN stuff is still going to get pirated. Sky Sports stuff still gets pirated.
That
BT Sports stuff still gets pirated.
To me.
But without that infrastructure behind it, it is so much easier.
I don't think so. I've worked with businesses that are failing, and they will come up with various excuses as to why they're not failing. I think that the business is failing and struggling. Like you said, they're overpaying everybody. You have given all the indications of a business that's going to struggle. They're overpaying their stars, and they're not getting loads of people. The people that they're overpaying are not bringing audiences in. You're showing us all the places that they're struggling. They are obviously going to spin it as a narrative. We're not struggling. It's piracy. We just need a bigger broadcaster, and we'll see what happens. But that sounds like nonsense to me.
That is interesting, and you're right. I did give a plethora of reasons as to why I do think that it isn't the most sustainable project, and I do think Misfits, although it's lost glamour because it's lost a lot of stars over to Kingpyn, is a lot more of a sustainable platform for constant fighting.
There's no point leaving one promoter to go to another promoter, and then that promoter goes bankrupt, or that promoter is struggling. Anybody can sit here and say, "Oh, don't do content on this channel. Come and do content on this channel. I'll pay you £1,000 every time you turn up," and then that they go bust. Anybody can do that.
But yeah, I know, and it is a problem. And obviously, Misfits themselves, the reason why it's a more sustainable platform, the way they're doing it with their money, but it's also, in some ways, with some of the events, less glamorous than something like Kingpyn, where they flash this money around, because there is a problem with influencer boxing as well, which makes it less sustainable, and that is, it's not quite what it was a couple of years ago. The only thing that was really keeping it alive was who's going to beat Jake Paul, when's KSI going to be able to build up to fight Jake Paul, because what you're seeing so much within these cases now is it's just becoming low-level boxing, because a lot of these people that join it and sign up for it are forgetting every other social media thing they do. They're stopping making YouTube videos. They're stopping doing that.
Agreed,
Just becoming low-level boxers.
Needs to be in their
and the
contract
reason
as well.
why people want to watch these people is because they like them for what they do outside the ring.
Agreed. That's a
they
good
like
point.
hearing Nick J. Francis waffle a load on boxing talk. So they're like, I want to see if this guy can back up his shit in the ring. Unfortunately, he disappears off the show for 2 months to go have a fight, and then, you know, it kind of just takes the glamour away from it. But
If I'm KSI, my annoyance with DAZN is that we could, if Kingpyn are really struggling in the way that we think that they are, and it's all alleged, we can crush Kingpyn while they're down. This is business, right? It's not personal. We can crush them, and all of the stars that left us when we were paying them 500 grand that went and took £3 million contracts, they're going to have to come back because they're going to see that, guess what, that £3 million contract wasn't sustainable. Get your ass back over here. KSI is the daddy.
I like what you're saying. I like what you're saying, but I will counter with one point before we end, and it's actually very correlated to this T-shirt I'm wearing. It's almost as if I planned it.
T-shirt. There's no sleeves on it.
This vest, yeah. NWO, the New World Order, a heel faction created by WCW, which were a competitor to the WWE. And the reason I bring this in is because is it better for KSI to destroy his competition? Or is it better for him to give life to his competition, or allow life by allowing DAZN to partner with them, which therefore brings more eyes into the influencer boxing scene, which by proxy brings more people interested, gets more kids invested into it, which therefore gets more people invested into every Misfits event he does.
You
As we saw
haven't heard
with this T-shirt, the Monday Night Wars, yeah? WCW come around 1993, 1994. They start challenging WWE. They start getting millions upon millions of new viewers that had never been invested in pro wrestling before. All of a sudden, WWE profits off that. And you have this huge, colossus competition between the two every single Monday night, which blew wrestling up into what it is what it became in the late 90s and what it is today. And you could see a similar thing in the boxing scene. And if he was to crush every single bit of competition,
not every single competition. You obviously haven't heard of the big new player in town in the world of influencer boxing promotions. Wet Productions. Have you not heard? You haven't heard of Wet Productions?
No. We're not going to talk about Wet Productions.
We're not going to talk about Wet Productions.
No, we'll talk about most valuable promotions. We'll talk about Jake Paul, KSI, which I believe, if it was Jake Paul and the other boot who was running Kingpyn, I will tell you, I think he would have tried everything to crush them because he can't stand MVP or Jake Paul. But I don't think Kingpyn are quite on that level.
All I know is Alexia Grace going to smash Astrid Wet. That's all I know, right?
But anyway, just before we do close, what do you think Kingpyn's next move should be with DAZN under their belt now? To build a sustainable model.
DAZN already have a sustainable model under their roof.
Kingpyn.
I know. DAZN already have a sustainable model under their roof in Misfits, and they are going to need to take some inspiration from what Misfits do, and they're going to need to work on that partnership. They're going to have to, because their strategy of just overpaying stars clearly doesn't work.
But that's not DAZN. What did Kingpyn do after this tournament?
That's what Kingpyn do. Go to DAZN and say, we're partnered with you guys, and for us to be successful and make you guys profit, you need to bring KSI or some of the stuff you've learned, not necessarily him as a person, but some of the stuff you've learned, from him, bring that over to us. Give us a hand.
Give us the other Sauerland brother, and we'll
100%. They need
our own thing
for sure.
But anyway, guys, let us know what you guys think down in the comment section down below, and of course, let us know who you think's gonna win the Kingpyn tournament. For me, my money is on the 7-figure Gibber, the beast from the Middle East. I think he's gonna spark out Jarvis. I think he's gonna go all the way. I think it's gonna be a brilliant tournament. I really like the way it's gone down so far, and I think he is gonna walk away with his hand held in victory. But let me know what you guys think about Kingpyn, about the whole influencer scene right now, down in the comment section down below. But for now, it's been me. It's been your boy, Nick J. Francis, and we'll catch you